you, so you talked about the fragmentation, and now, like, now I understand why that was so important, because you're talking about intent, right? The intent, and I wanted to ask you, like, who came up with, like, using that type of system? Do you guys know? Was it Persistence that invented it, or like who else kind of uses this? Like, where did it come from? Just for people who don't know.
No, I mean, we definitely didn't come up with it. I'll be very honest about it. It's something we saw elsewhere. Um, I think, in a way, like, what's so important about it is just like one of the biggest issues that we've seen in crypto has been bridges when it comes to like hacks, and like a lot of
Oh
the big
yeah,
hacks in crypto have been these bridges
the
where
two biggest
you have
hacks have been bridges, like over two
correct.
billion. Yeah,
Correct. And so that's typically because you have these kind of lock and burn or mechanism, or like lock and mint, sorry, and then burn
mm.
and mint mechanisms, and then like they
It's really
match. But
complex.
in a way, I think the person who came up with intents must have thought in a similar way. Like, look, while we create all these assets natively on different chains, instead of trying to send them around, like, why don't we just kind of figure out a way and how to actually keep them on the original chain where, or the original ecosystem where they belong? We assign, in a way, a value to it, right? And then we just find people who are willing to swap that value from one chain to another, right? And that's, I think that's the entire belief behind intents. Like, you don't actually need to send assets from A to B if you have two counterparties on chain A and B who are willing to take opposite trades, right? So basically, it's just trying to find a matching partner, in a way, to make your trade happen without having to trade into this, typically like a pool or something. So basically, it's more of like going back to how centralized exchanges work, in a way, more order book style,
Yeah,
trying to find a counterparty to your trade rather than the DEX way of like trading into an AMM, for example. I mean, there's pros and cons, obviously, of the AMM, but it's typically expensive in terms of liquidity. You have to build up a little. I mean, and of course, I'm talking against my own shop here, like, but I do think there are use cases for a lot of like, yeah, DEXs and AMMs.
yeah,
Uh, but I think with an asset like Bitcoin, like that is so big, so like tradable, so easy, not easy, but like straightforward to kind of value. I think the
yeah,
intense route makes a lot more sense, because you would need, like, on a DEX, like if you look at the volume of Bitcoin itself, right? Like, you just need so much liquidity locked up on a DEX to just trade Bitcoin. I think, sure, it's fine. Like, if you want to trade Bitcoin with like, or pair it with smaller assets which don't have that much liquidity, right? Um, but yeah, I think a combination of like intense and just like order book based trading, which can happen on chain, combined with DEXs, I think is the ends. Like, maybe, I mean, the end game is hard to call it. I think there's never an end game, but
for
at
sure.
least it's a better solution than a lot of things that are currently out there.
Yeah, it's actually kind of, I don't want to say it's funny, but it's kind of, you're reminding me. I had a space with Hisham from Ellis Network a few weeks ago, and he also mentioned, you know, what their solution is to make it act more like a centralized exchange. And so it's funny that you're saying that too, like, because that's usually what the user experience is more comfortable with, is better, actually, the way that they do things. So it's funny that, you guys are kind of seeing also the value in that. It's like, stop being so much like what the dexes have been so far, but try to make
Yeah.
it act more like a centralized exchange because of the ease of use, and
Yeah.
this,
Yeah, sorry, go
the,
ahead.
the payment, that has to go, the fees that are going to be more friendly to the user.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but absolutely. And I think, look, I mean, that's a very kind of DeFi, degen type of way of thinking, saying like centralized exchanges are bad and like it's terrible. But like, man, in terms of user adoption, centralized exchanges are still way bigger than anything in DeFi.
Yeah,
And there's a reason for that. It's simple, it's easy to use. Um, and I think you have to not try and fight the system in a way because it's the system and it's like, oh yeah, there's centralized aspect. I think you need to pick the elements that are good and keep those, and the ones that are not good you replace. And like, I think that's why a combination of stuff where you have decentralized factors like your own custody, I think that's important for people who want to. Like, some people might not want to custody their own assets, they're scared of losing their seeds. Um, but in general, yeah, I mean, an intent-based solution has certain like centralized components. You are actually relying on some sort of a market maker, which we call a solver, who kind of fills in that like or finds that counterparty for you. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
And I think that's not necessarily bad. Like people know this, people accept this in a way, and you can decentralize some of these components. Like eventually, anyone can be a solver if you have capital
Yeah.
that you want to be willing to put in to solve these type of intent requests on both chains. You can come in and do that. We're not like gonna block anyone from doing it, but I think it's a bit further down the road to kind of decentralize. But I think it's a slow approach. It's a spectrum, right? And like it's not like left or right. I think it's like somewhere in the middle and
Yeah.
moving towards. Yeah.